Now, this is one where I got into the famous one first, and I absolutely loved it. And when I heard this album that I'm going to show, I was disappointed. So much so that I almost thought to myself, "What's this piece of shit?" You know, because I just so wanted another album like London Calling. Now, I know some people say it's the first Clash album, which is the true famous one, and I've got a certain degree of sympathy with that. But you can't argue with London Calling. It's one of the most iconic albums of its era, and it's fantastic as well. I mean, it's so focused, great selection of tracks. It doesn't let up for a moment, you know, unlike this record, which I've really fallen in love with in the last couple of years, and that's Combat Rock. Now, when I first heard this, like I said, I was like, what on earth is this? It was just, apart from a couple of songs, you know, you've got Shall I Stay, Should I Go, and Rock the Casbah. Most of the tracks are kind of long, aimless, meandering, quite urban, dark, a little bit tuneless. But there's something about it draws me in. I think it's the production. It's just got this kind of endless, deep, dub-like production that just draws you into the tracks. And I just love all the spoken word stuff on it. It's like most of the time he seems to be talking rather than singing. So you don't get all the hooks and all the tunes that you get on London Calling, but you just get this sort of slightly disconcerting kind of narration almost, or just a spoken word thing. And I just love it. I can always put it on, never gets on my nerves. And I'm not going to say it's definitely better than London Calling, because I think London Calling has just got so many great songs on it and so many hooks on it that you can't deny it. But this is really, you know, this is really a record that I've grown to like over the years, and I can't quite believe now that I used to put it on and think to myself, you know, what's this crap? I just think it's a tremendous record.
I bought that on the week of release,
Okay.
And I was disappointed, I admit it. I had the single as well, Know Your Rights, which is still my favourite song off that album, especially the little rockabilly guitar bit at the very end, which I think is great. And there's this piano note that goes down, just thumps down, fantastic.
Yeah.
But my other favourite song off that is Ghetto Defendant on side 2, which is like a dub type song.
Yeah.
I think it's good. Side 1 is very good. Side 2 is not so bad. But
I think it's the dub thing that, I mean, I read a biography of The Clash, I think it was this year or last year, by Pat Gilbert. And in that book, it's a fascinating book because he really delves into The Clash's love for Jamaican music and dub reggae and everything. And if you read that book, you really start to realize that it wasn't something that they were just grafting onto their music. It was something totally intrinsic to who they were as people. You know, they just absolutely loved that music. And I think in America in particular, a lot of American music fans of the day, they were a bit impatient with that side of the Clash because they just wanted the punk rock anthems and the pop songs, and they sort of didn't want the Clash to be messing around with that stuff. And there was just a sort of misunderstanding there, I think, because the Clash were truly passionate about all that stuff. And I think that's the record that you truly hear that. This is not a band who are just messing about with a bit of dub reggae. I mean, they're truly delving into a seam of it, aren't they?
Have you ever heard the Sandinista album, the Triple album?
Yes, I have. Not for a long time. I've never actually owned that record. I know it's got a bit of a checkered reputation, hasn't it?
It's hard going, but it is actually really good. You know,
Yeah.
It does grow on you, and it's full of this sort of dub sound.
Yeah.
When I first heard that, I thought it was dreadful, totally dreadful, but it's grown on me. Yeah. Right, my next one, and I think you will be on my side with this. It's an obvious one, and you know I love this album.
Mm-hmm. I nearly featured this.
And it's Pipes of Peace. And now this got slated, and it still gets slated when compared to Tug of War. But honestly, I will run for this before I run for Tug of War now. I love Tug of War, I really do, and I'll accept that it is a better album. However, I just love the sound of this. I love the fun of it. The Hey Hey and Tug of Peace, which everybody goes, oh my God, those are dreadful. I think they're great crack. I really do. It's a pop album, that's it. End of story. It's a pop album, and it delivers. Say is one of the best produced singles ever of 1983 anyway. But ever, I think it's fantastic. And if you play that in the car, you have to turn it up loud. Pipes of Peace is a great number. Maybe not as good as Tug of War, but it's still extremely good song. Hit #1 in the charts. So Bad. You compare So Bad with his falsetto with, say, Girlfriend from London Town. So bad wins every time for me.
Mm.
What is it with The Man? Why do people not like The Man? I think it's a catchy song. It's a
Mm.
decent pop song. Is it because it's Michael Jackson? I don't know. Sweetest Little Show in Town. Yeah, great with a fantastic acoustic guitar. There's a little bit of acoustic guitar, lead guitar, acoustic guitar on it, which is really, really good. And okay, Average Person is one of McCartney's silly songs.
Mm.
But it's fun. I love this. I really do. And it's in my top 5 McCartney albums, and I don't give a damn.
I didn't choose to show it because I thought you would. But yeah, I totally agree with that. And I've always loved it too. I've got a very particular set of memories attached to it for a start, which I won't go into now. But I think it represented McCartney's last gasp really as a pop star as well. It was when he was in the charts as a solo artist. It was pre-Broad Street, which is when everything started to go a bit pear-shaped for him, because it was just an era of great, pop singles. And
That's one of my favorite McCartney eras, is from 80 to 84. I just think it was fantastic.
yeah,
And I was, leaving Wings, I think maybe it was probably the best thing he had ever done. Now, he could have gone back to Wings after a while, because I'm not too keen on anything from, say, 1989 onwards. But those early 80s years I thought were great. And Press to Play is another one as well, which I have to say is actually very good.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think we should do a separate video on that another day, Richard. That's waiting to happen.
Okay.
Okay, so my next two, I won't spend too long on this because this is one which is still in development, shall we say, and that's because the famous record I've known for a long time, and the one that I'm going to show, which is the other one, I've only known it a short amount of time. It was given to me as a gift. So this is ABC and Lexicon of Love, one of the great 80s pop albums ever. Trevor Horn production, fantastic. Given to me as VCLT by John Bellamy. I think it was earlier this year, might have been last year. This is Beauty Stab, which is the one immediately after, I think. And have you heard this, Richard?
Is that the one with That Was Then, This Is Now, or something like that?
Yeah, that's the first track. That's the first
right, track. That song, that's the only
Yeah,
I know.
also the song SOS on the end, which sounds a little bit like it comes from Lexicon of Love. Now, this record was absolutely slated at the time, and the reason for that, I think, is because it's almost like a sort of indie guitar rock album. It was them trying to escape from the Trevor Horn production, all that Fairlight synth stuff, and trying to be more of a rock band, I guess. And I think it was seen maybe as being a bit generic. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue now that the songs are as good as the ones on Lexicon of Love, but what I'll say about this record is that if it was completely slagged off and slated, and that was not warranted at all. And I think there's some really, really fine songs on this, and the rock style of the music really works on the album. It's nice to hear them without that kind of, Trevor Horn veneer. The track SOS is just absolutely beautiful. It's fantastic.
That's a single as well, I think, yeah.
It's a reasonably new one to me, this, so I'm not 100% convinced yet that I do prefer this one over the famous one, but I just wanted to put a plug in for it. This is a record that you can get from charity shops. You can get it from Oxfam for a couple of quid. It's highly available, and I have heard.
I remember when it came out, James, and it was slated.
Yes, it was
slated by the press and slated by the ABC fans, because one of my friends at the time loved the Lexicon of Love, couldn't stand that album at all.
Right.
Couldn't understand what they'd done.
Yeah.
Why they're not repeating the formula? But
yeah, I think that's why it should be applauded. I mean, they could easily have done another Lexicon of Love Part 2, but they decided obviously not to do that. I've no idea the history of it as to whether they actually wanted to, try and do something radically different. It's not radically different. It still sounds like them. It's not as if they completely went off and did something, totally off the scale. But it's definitely a grower, I'd say. It's an album which improves each time you hear it. So I thought it was worth showcasing that one.
Okay, this one here is a forgotten about album. This fell between two quite successful albums for this band. This is Stranglers, and this is the Gospel According to the Men in Black. This is weird as hell. It's really jerky. The melodies are so difficult to get into, but I keep coming back to it. There's one track off it which was a single, Just Like Nothing on Ugh. That's how he actually sings Earth. Ugh. And there's even chipmunks in it. I don't know how it charted at all, but I think it's really, really good. You get, let me see, actually the track list is actually on the front here. The first single was called Thrown Away, which is, it's got a keyboard part to it. it's not Dave Greenfield's usual keyboard, but it's like a loop that is really, really mesmerizing. I think it's fantastic. I had that single, actually bought the single at the time. Second Coming, Waiting for the Men in Black. There's some instrumentals on this, but for some reason, I love this album. Absolutely love it. I played it a couple of times last week just to familiarize myself, and I had to play it again, not because I wanted to keep on familiarizing myself with it. I wanted to hear it again.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it that much. So this, for me, this came out in 1981. And their second album of that year was La Folie, which had the Golden Brown single on it. This one, Sank Without Trace, and I think it's one of the coolest sleeves as well. So
It's really, really strange. I've never seen that album before.
Have you not?
No, I've never clapped eyes on it. No.
No, it's the forgotten about one.
Yeah.
People think after the Raven in '79, the next one was La Folie. No, this is the next one.
Right.
It's weird. It is weird.
Yeah.
But
I shall definitely check that one out. Is it on CD? Can you get it on CD?
Oh, you can, yes. Yeah. Extra tracks as well.
Cool. All right. Well, the next one, Richard, is one which will chime with you. I think the artist, if not the album, I'm not quite sure how you feel about the album. Now, when I show the famous one, I guess any number of records will pop into your mind as being the one that I'm going to show. But this is the famous one, Tubular Bells, like Oldfield, which I know is one of your all-time favourite artists. This record, I can't even explain to you what a huge influence this made on me when I was in my teens. I probably listened to this more than any other record, you know, between the ages of about, probably between, I don't know, 14 and 16. It was just on constant rotation. Now, I'm not going to say that this is his best album apart from Tubular Bells, but it's one that I connected to a lot, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I got into the swing of listening to it a lot. It's Ommadawn. It was the third album after, the second album after Tubular Bells.
It's his third, yeah.
So it's this, Hergest Ridge, and then Ommadawn. I don't think it is as good as Tubular Bells as such. It's clearly not as groundbreaking, but I think side 2 is not as good as side 2 of Tubular Bells. So I think side 1 of this record maybe is as good as side 1 of Tubular Bells. It doesn't have the iconic, huge climax at the end of side 1 of Tubular Bells has, really. But it does do pretty good, though. I mean, it's got a lot of Celtic influences to it. And it's just one that you can lose yourself to. And Tubular Bells is totally played out, really, I think. You know, the first Tubular Bells, I mean, I've heard it like a trillion times, you know, and occasionally it does grate on me. It seems almost like he's trying too hard in places to have lots of different things happening, you know, lots of musical interludes and episodes and trying to, you know, do clever stuff all the time. Whereas this one seems to have a real kind of flow to it. It just rolls on and builds. It's very organic sounding, and it's just got the most comforting sound to it. Would you agree?
I do agree, and at the very end, it's very English.
Yes, definitely.
With the On Horseback, which was actually a single. It was a double A side with the Christmas hit and also Jubilo. I enjoy that. I don't know how to describe Mike Oldfield albums, especially instrumental ones. I just either enjoy them or I don't. And yes, there is Celtic influences in that. I think some of the chieftains are in that.
Maybe. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like hornpipes and things, isn't there? Like those penny whistles.
Funny enough, side 2 of that album I prefer over side 1.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
I also love the Hergest Ridge album as well, side 2 of it.
Yeah.
But, thought maybe you might have picked it, but yeah, no, Ommadawn's very good. Have you heard Return to Ommadawn?
No, I haven't actually. No.
It's not a bad album. It was released about 5 years ago. Okay. But the true, a lot of people say that the true follow-up to Ommadawn is actually Amarok.
Right.
From 1990, and that is my favorite. Okay, well, my next one is Cat Stevens, Foreigner. Now, this is from 1973. Now, the 3 big ones for him were Mona Bone Jacqueline, Tea for the Tillerman, and Teaser and the Firecat. And I suppose you could say Catchable at 4. This is completely different. The acoustic guitar is more or less gone, and it's replaced by electric piano, which for me is a no, don't like it. But for some reason, this really works. Side 1, the Foreigner Suite, takes up the whole of that side. And it's really about 3 or 4 or 5 little small songs sort of stitched together.
Yeah.
On first listen, you think dreadful. Second listen, you pick out bits that you like, and then the more you get to know it, it's all one piece, and it is actually really good. The single off this was The Hurt, which is really good, slightly more up tempo to his like acoustic father and son. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a fast song, but it's got a bit of a groove to it as well. And then you have things like How Many More Times Later and 100 I Dream, which I think are all very strong songs. But I do miss the acoustic guitar on it. But in saying that, I still think this is a much better album than the previous one, which is Catch Bullet 4, and the next one, Buddha in the Chocolate Box. And it's always an enjoyable listen. Again, first bought this, hated it, lived with it, played it, fell in love with it. So from 1973, Foreigner.
Yeah, I mean, Cat Stevens, I really don't know much of his catalogue at all. You know, I know Tea for the Tillerman and Teaser and the Firecats, very, very limited. It's odd because the first record, one of the first records I ever had was the 45 of Morning is Broken when I was a very small child. And I absolutely loved it. And it is a bit strange that I never really got heavily into him. But yeah, I mean, I've heard you talking about him a lot. So he's definitely an artist that's on my list of must check out more by. But I mean, that's not an album that I'd ever heard of or seen before. So
I would never start with it, but you know, the big three you always start with, and the problem with the big three is once you've heard them, everything else pales in comparison.
Okay, well, my next one is an interesting one. I think I do think that the Famous album is the better of the two. I think the other one is really excellent, and it's nothing like as well known. And I'm talking about the Buggles.
Mm-hmm.
So this is The Age of Plastic, which I think came out in 1980. And when I was a kid, I loved this album. Again, I mean, it was just such a huge album for me. But I had absolutely no idea that they'd done another album for years. I mean, this one came out, I don't know, a couple of years later. This is Adventures in Modern Recording, which came out a couple of years later. And the band had broken up, 1981, so it was just the year after. The band had broken up. Jeff Downes had left to form Asia, and he just basically dumped Trevor Horn, decided that there was no commercial future working with Trevor. Obviously, he had no idea what was just around the corner for Trevor Horn. So he left to form Asia, and Trevor did this album by himself. There's a couple of tracks that have got Jeff Downes on, but it's mostly a Trevor Horn solo album. Now, when I found this in Cobb Records, and it would have been probably about 1985, 86. And when I saw it in the racks, I can honestly say it's one of the most astonishing moments in my life as a record buyer. If you imagine that there's a band or an artist that you loved and then they just vanished, and then just years later you discover that there was a second album which came out immediately after it, but you just had no idea about it. And most people don't know anything about this record. It slipped out, did nothing, didn't chart, vanished, and that was the end of the Buggles, But it's a wonderful record. It's not as good as The Age of Plastic. It misses Jeff Downes, I think, but it's got some great stuff on it. Trevor Horn singing his heart out. He's not the best singer in the world, but it's just got all this great Fairlight stuff. And it was just before his career really took off. It's a really interesting album. It was just before everything started to happen with Frankie and all that, So historically, it's quite an important record, but there are some wonderful tracks on it. Beatnik, fantastic. I Am a Camera, which was a song that they'd recorded already for the drama album, Yes. Or was it, perhaps Yes did it after that? I always forget whether they did it first or second, but Yes did a version of it called Into the Lens on the drama album. Mm-hmm. And the Buggles version is nothing like the Yes version. I mean, the Yes version is full of like just playing, like Steve Howe doing all this guitar stuff. But the version on here is just so beautiful. It's got Jeff Downes on it. It's very clean. It's just beautifully contoured pop music. It just sounds fantastic. Just that kind of Trevor Horn fairy dust. You can get it on CD. It came out on CD a few years ago. But like I said, if you mention the Buggles to people will immediately think of Video Killed the Radio Star. If you mention that they made an album, they will think of this one. Very few people will think of that one or even know about it. So I had to feature it.
I didn't know they had a second album. I haven't even got Age of Plastic.
Yeah,
I've been looking out for it, but it's actually quite expensive to buy now.
It is, yeah.
It's not cheap, and if you're looking for a tenner, you're not going to get a VG Plus at all.
No, well, I think it's now seen as being quite an important album. I think at the time it was dismissed as just being, you know, pop fare, but I think because of the way that they predated so many of those synth duos and all that kind of 80s, or, you know, all the 80s production, all the 80s pop that was going to come up, it's kind of seen now as almost a visionary album.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, had to include that.
Well, this one, you know, I'm going to show, and I will defend this. This is their second best album of the 80s, even though I kind of think it's their best. Although saying that, I know The Works is their best, but this is the one I come back to all the time.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people don't like this. There's a bit of everything or something for everybody in this.
Mm-hmm.
Side one is actually my favorite side. I love the staying power. It's just so energetic. I remember watching, I was at Queen at Milton Keynes when it was on Channel 4 or BBC 2 or whatever way back in the day. And they were promoting this album. And I think he said something like, it's only an effing record. And I went into Staying Power. And it was brilliant.
Really great version as well, isn't it? Fantastic.
It is a very, very good version. There's nothing, this is one of the albums where I don't dislike any song. I like everything. My only gripe is Back Chat, which I love the music, but I just don't like the words. I just don't think they suit the music. I would have loved an instrumental of that. And also one of the lyrics in Life is Real, when it says Lennon is a genius, I think it's sloppy. I think he could have been a little bit more subtle.
Yeah.
But yeah, a fantastic album. Cool Cat. I said that before that I love the David Bowie version, which you can hear on YouTube. It's not as good as this. Cool Cat is one of the best Chic songs you'll never hear.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a Chic song, really, really good. Put Out the Fire is as good as Hammer to Fall.
Mm-hmm.
What's the problem there? Life is Real is a good piano ballad. Las Palabras de Amor, I know I'll get shot for this, but for me, it's better than Save Me. At least there's a little bit more excitement about it. I think Save Me is just a little bit bland. I know a lot of people won't agree with me. And Body Language, you know, love it or hate it, at least it's something different. And yeah, fair play them for doing it. Love this album. And it would be, of the 80s, the one I would play the most. I say it's my second favourite of the 80s because The Works is a genius of the album, but I would reach for this before.
Yeah, I got it for Christmas the year it came out, and I've got such a clear memory of taking it up to my room excitedly on Christmas Day and playing it and just being totally, not knocked out by it, but I was totally kind of like, what on earth has happened? It was just like, yeah, it really took a lot of adjusting, but it was exciting. There was a kind of sense that Queen were actually doing something different.
Yeah, you got the sense of it with the game as well, with things like Dragon Attack and Another One Bites the Dust. So it's not so big a shock.
No.
To be honest with you, it's a little bit more smoothed out with Hot Space and a little bit more seedy, should I say?
I think there's maybe a bit of a knee-jerk thing that goes on with that record, particularly in North America. You'll get American Queen fans will routinely put that one on the bottom, and it's almost a given for them. It's almost like, well, let's just put the disco crap at the bottom and then move on. You know, I think there's more to it than that. I think you've got to. I think if you're a Queen fan, you sort of owe it to yourself to get into that album because it's part of their story, isn't it? It's part of what was happening at the time. You know, the Munich gay club scene that Freddie was into. You know, it wasn't just a kind of blip. Even though it's seen in retrospect as a kind of wrong move, or they went down a bit of a cul-de-sac, I don't think it was. I think it was them truly starting to grasp the 80s and go, we need to actually change.
Without it, would you ever have got The Works? Because, you know, they obviously looked at it as a blip and then they thought, right, we need to get ourselves back on track here.
Yeah.
And The Works is a fantastic album. It's not perfect, but it's that one there, I just love it. I just can't help it. I love it. And it's up there.
Okay, well, I'm going to do my last choice now, Richard. I don't know whether you're happy to do that. I mean, if you've got one that you really burningly want to do. So
no.
This is so great because I'm going to finish with the artist that you started with, and that was completely unrehearsed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll show the famous one. Now, there are some people who will say that it's the early albums are the true, you know, but to me, this is always the one.
That's always the famous one,
the first Tom Petty album I ever got. Full Moon Fever, and you know, I loved it. It was just such a huge album for me. But I have always also loved this one too. Mm-hmm. This is the one that I got having become a Tom Petty fan. So Full Moon Fever was the album that made me a Tom Petty fan, and this was the next album after that, Into the Great Wide Open. It was the second one to be produced by Jeff Lynne. And to me, I'd almost say it's a better album in a way. Learning to Fly, fantastic. King's Highway, Into the Great Wide Open, Two Gunslingers, and The Dark of the Sun. All 5 of those tracks, I love all of them. All or Nothing is maybe a bit more generic. And then on side 2, All the Wrong Reasons, fantastic. Too Good to Be True, fantastic. Out in the Cold, maybe a bit more of a generic one. You and I Will Meet Again, fantastic. Making Some Noise, a bit generic. And then Built to Last is really good. So there are a few tracks which are maybe not brilliant, but taken overall, I just love the sound of this record. I love the Jeff Lynne production. It's got a real richness to it. I think Full Moon Fever was a bit more stripped back. It was more like it was recorded in a garage, which I think it was actually, wasn't it? This one sounds like they've gone...
I think they've given that one the full Jeff Lynne treatment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was done perhaps over a longer period of time. You know, Full Moon Fever, I think, was, you know, written and recorded in about 10 minutes, wasn't it? Famously. This one, famously, he really pissed off the Heartbreakers, Jeff Lynne. He didn't want to know about their musicianship. He didn't want to let them contribute what they wanted to contribute. It was like, no, you do this, you do this. This is the Jeff Lynne sound. I'm in charge here. And they really hated it. And that story makes me laugh, really. It's quite interesting. When Shannon did her rankings, she did do quite an interesting Tom Petty rankings video, and she was very, very clear. It was like right at the very bottom.
Shannon's not keen on the Jeff Lynne sound.
I just think Tom and Jeff worked so well together. I think Tom realised how good it was, and I think he did Wildflowers, I think, because he could see if he didn't make a break from Jeff Lynne at that point, the two of them were just going to be totally like that forever, you know. It was such a meshing of the songwriting style, the vocal delivery, everything seemed to come together. It was so strange because Jeff was this lad from Birmingham, and, you know, Tom Petty was a totally different background, really, although I guess they were both working class, I suppose, but it was strange the way they just seemed to completely hit it off, didn't they, musically?
Well, they did. That's the thing. They did. And that Full Moon Fever is kind of regarded as the Wilburys Volume 2.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that is Wilburys Volume 2. But, okay, my last one is a band that has had, between 1975 and 1977, they had about 7 albums. None of them are critically acclaimed. 1975 to 1982, sorry. None of them are critically acclaimed, but I'm going to pick one that doesn't have hit singles on it. I don't think I've actually shown this band apart from a greatest hits. You may be surprised. I love them. Smokie.
Okay.
Now, Smokie were Chris Norman on vocals, Terry Utley on bass, Alan Silson on guitar, and Pete Spencer on drums. Now, these were the 4th group for the Mike Chapman, Nicky Chin songwriting team after the Sweets, Susie Quattro, and Mud. And had huge big hit singles with Living Next Door to Alice, who is Alice.
Yeah.
Also Lay Back in the Arms of Someone, Oh Carol, For a Few Dollars More, Don't Play Rock and Roll to Me, all big hits. However, on the albums, they wrote their own material, and their material is brilliant. And I'm showing this album because this is the first one not to have any Chin and Chapman songs. It's from 1979. Unfortunately, there's no hits on it, but it does. The Smokie sound is still there. The song San Francisco Bay could have been written by Chin and Chapman. It's absolutely wonderful. There is one cover version called Babe, It's Up to You, written by somebody Ferris and McCarr. I don't know who that is. There's a track on it called Big Fat Mama. It's not the Status Quo song, but the out McCartney with that sort of granny type 1920s music, absolutely brilliant. London is Burning is a fantastic song. It's almost like the Grim Reaper is singing it. Really deep, scary vocals, very, very, very good. Very atmospheric. Do To Me was a single. Really good, strong album from the guys. Now, they had about, the previous album was called the Montrose album, which had Old Carol and For a Few Dollars More. And their very first single that they wrote by themselves called Mexican Girl, which was a hit. I think these guys are great. I'm going to be doing a spotlight on them very soon. I've been playing them a lot lately as well. For some reason, I just pulled them out and thought, yes, really enjoying this again, and I have all this stuff on CD. So Smokie, maybe not the coolest in the world, especially they actually split up in 1982, the end of 82, start of 83, whenever they were going over to, I believe it was Stockholm, to provide vocals for Agneta Falskog's debut album. Had to get a bit of ABBA in there. And they decided on the plane they were going to split up, and they did. Then 3 years later, two of them got back together again, which is this one and this one here, Terry Utley and Alan Silson, and they brought in a guy called Alan Barton on vocals. Actually, Chris Norman suggested they bring in Alan Barton. Now, you may know Alan Barton from a duo who were very successful in the early 80s when they were pushing pineapples and shaking the tree and going, aga do, do, do. The lead singer became the lead singer of Smokie, and he did a really good job. But unfortunately, in the mid-90s, he was killed when his tour bus came off the road.
Oh dear.
And they've had two more lead singers since. I don't know any other music really since 1982. Everything while Chris Norman was singer. And he did a duet, which was quite successful in the States with Suzi Quatro. It was called Stumbling In, which was Suzi Quatro's only big hit in the States. So yeah, Smokie, The Other Side of the Road from 1979. No hits, didn't chart, brilliant album.
Well, I've got a Smokie best of on vinyl, which I picked up last year, and that was on the back of watching you talking about them. But Smokie were one of the bands, one of the all-time just common bands that were on Top of the Pops back in the 1970s. All the time. I remember them being on, and they were such a big part of what went on. And I'm guessing nowadays a lot of people won't even remember. Well, I mean, certain people will remember them. Obviously, you know, people of a certain vintage will remember them, but other people, you know, the name might not mean too much. Okay, Richard, well, I happen to know, because you showed it at the start, there is one record that you haven't shown. So do you want to do that as just a quick bonus one? Because I know it's one that we both know and love, so you might as well show it. There we go.
House of Power, ELO. Why do people not like this? I don't understand. The songwriting in this is magnificent. Yes, it's got an 80s production, but it is from 1986. Calling America, fantastic single, one of their best of the 80s. So serious. How could you not like that? Catchy as hell. Without Someone, drenched in synths, but absolutely beautiful. Send It, Endless Lies, the best Roy Orbison song Roy Orbison never recorded. Absolutely brilliant. Love the album. Secret Lives, It's All Right, or Is It All Right? Yeah, fantastic album. I prefer this to Secret Messages. I know you actually probably prefer Secret Messages, but the last true great ELO album for me.
That was quite an important record for me too. It was my first ever CD, or it was my dad's CD. He came home with it one day, totally out of the blue, out of the blue. And I thought ELO were long defunct. I'd not heard anything from them since about 1979 or something. And I thought, wow, you know. And listening to that really was what energized me back into the whole, you know, Jeff Lynne story. And of course, not long after that album, because that was the final ELO album of the original incarnation, that's when he started to do the George Harrison thing and the Wilburys thing. So it does sort of dovetail into that. But as you say, the 80s production on that album it's not quite the sound that he was going to go on to explore. It's much more reverb, all the big gated drums and everything. But I think you're right. It's got some cracking stuff on it. And it's certainly, I think, like Hot Space, it does not deserve to be written.
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not.
Great stuff. Well, we did it. We got through 20 albums between us there, which, well, 21, including that last one of yours. So thank you very much for sharing those with me.
Enjoyed it.
And hopefully we got the concept across. So viewers, if you've got any ideas of your own for this, a favourite album, which is maybe not the famous one, do share your thoughts and comments down in the thing down there below. What's it called? The comment section. So thanks, Richard, and no doubt we'll meet up again in the new year for more videos and more nonsense.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. All right, folks. Take
Wish
care.
everybody a happy Christmas now.
Compliments of the season, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.